حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let's make dua inshallah. We'll start. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam. Tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa shafi'ina wa habibina wa maulana Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. Allahumma rabbana zidna ilman nafi'a wa amala mutaqabbala wa rizqan wa shifa'a min kulli da. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. فسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Inshallah, we're going to continue to our notes, Islam and Muslims in the modern world and the challenges faced by youths in modern societies. From our last discussion and continuing, we mentioned of the situation that youths face in regards mass media and media bombardment, and what is the consideration that one looks at what we see in society today as is being presented to the Muslims generally. One of the things that we should draw attention in the conclusion of that particular aspect of discussion on it was that we noted that news that is carried on the media in particular in regarding the way or the manner in which it disposes or presents itself to the community and the world at large is that sometimes when news are in particular referring to Muslims, it seems as though the news has a greater repetition and it continues to be the front burner of any of the media houses. Maybe it has relevance, or maybe it may not have the relevance, but when statistics is studied and shown, it is also shown that the majority of these crimes perpetrated by Muslims in regarding those type of activities that has been presented in the media is that just only about 30 to 40% or even 20% maybe of actual Muslims, and the next 80 or 70% of what is being purported or being presented is really of other people. And it has not been given the level of coverage as Muslim coverage. In other words, we get 80% coverage as opposed to 20% coverage, as opposed to the coverage of what should be really given 80% and what should be really given the relevant amount of coverage. Now, that is said in itself is telling us that there's a number of things that must be borne into consideration. And that is that, what does it do to the mind of our young children? Is that it presents that there's a level of inferiority, that we are to be, feel insignificant, that we are purported to be really bad, but this should not be the case as brought forth by the media. And that is one of the things that Muslims today must come to the understanding that it is our responsibility to carry forward news, to carry forward information as it ought to be carried forward. In other words, we have to be relevant. We have to be purposeful. We have to be knowledgeable. We have to be relevant in essence of what is going on around us so that we can also educate the community as what is also going on, and that what is left behind. It is our responsibility to give adequate coverage, and therefore that Muslims on the whole should not just think to themselves that we should not be part of media. In this world today, media is one of the ways of coverage of all sorts of information. In fact, today, if you ask any Muslim if they doesn't use WhatsApp or Facebook or some of these soft medias, you'll barely see anyone who leave their hands down. Everyone almost is on what? These media. So if every one of our Muslim brothers and sisters are on media, why should we not use that means of coverage of the correct information and news that we can send across to all our Muslim brothers? And in fact, that is currently being done on many occasions and instances. In fact, today we have many news, now the true light of the news being brought up because of these social media rooms that actually give a level of coverage. And we should be grateful for the fact that we're actually using it like this. So this is one of the ways we can actually highlight the truth, and one we can also identify those things that are remaining hidden. And we must say we are grateful for media. In fact, we should even take more advantage in the point that Muslims should be more forefront in speaking out and being clear on matters, especially when this is the main channel or route that is used for educating the world today. People, social media has been a source of income, whether a source of benefit or a sort of education for people, edifying them. But in its essence, there is some level of what you would call it filtering that one must do. Not everything you get in the media will be accurate. So there is some level of filtering that must take place there. So with that in mind, we as Muslims must be able to know what is right by looking into media and investigating all the different stories and then presenting and proper and informed, reply or response to all of the bombardment that may be forthcoming towards us. Now, another aspect of test and trial for our youths would be atheist bombardment and the ideologies. The atheists are those people who do not really believe in a God that exists. Agnostic are amongst that particular group. Those are one of the biggest challenges that we face today. In fact, today, only just last week, I met with someone who said that they know this particular young engineer, young man, went away and worked, a Muslim, and came back home after work as an atheist. Right? And this is more within our own community and region right around this area. Right? So this is not something that has only happened to one isolated case. The reason why we have to bring this up with our attention is that it is very important to know that a lot of our youngsters, males and females, this is the target group and the challenge group, especially when the level of education that we want for our children are based on this particular gauge. We are gauging our children and telling them, for example, that you have to have a degree in this, you have to have a degree in that, but nothing about Islamic knowledge. So they don't even have the concept correct about what is Islamic knowledge in reference to all of these matters. So if you want to educate your children at a level of degree in these different faculties, nothing is wrong with that, but also you must know that they are going to be fit into an environment that they will be challenged based on the knowledge that they have about their religion as well. And it will be tested. And if they do not get relevant answers as is necessary, they may choose otherwise. And that choice, sometimes, we will hear the end of the stick that someone say, please come and talk to my son or talk to my daughter, because they are moving away from the deen, the religion. And it is only because of high insight that they have lacked the opportunity of educating their children sufficiently and efficiently that they would be equipped to face the challenge that they have in respect to facing these tests and bombardments. So what is exactly the knowledge of an atheist and what they look at for the Muslims? According to some of the atheists, they say it is okay to be an atheist so long as you omit Islam from your list of religions to which you object. This is one of their first objections, is that they make you feel that if an atheist talk about Islam, the Muslims will retaliate and they'll get vexed and they'll become angry. So this is their first ball game, that if we only talk about Muslims, they'll send out a threat to kill all of us. That's the first approach that we use as a tactic or an approach to make people feel that we are a very angry and aggressive community and Muslim as a ummah. And this is far from the truth. But this is their first line of attack that they will use against the Muslims, that we are like this. So once that line is used, immediately they put a level of defense on you. And this should never be the case, because there is nothing to defend if someone says this unless there is evidence for this, and this is not the case. So that is the widely dishonest summary of the criticism of some of those leading atheists in the world, as well as people like who have recently died, like Stephen Hawking, I'm a person who is an atheist, a well-known scientist. And this was their thinking that they brought to the world. Absolutely nobody is arguing anything like that. We are not even saying that. The fact is that Islam gives us in the Quran many times that which will come to the points that we can defend this deen. And that is not what we will do. We will not prevent someone from saying something against Islam. No. Islam doesn't put a tape on everyone who decides to criticize Islam. It doesn't do that. And it will not do that. Because that is not the approach of our Islam. Any atheist is going to be critical of the world's major religion, including Islam. And there is nothing whatsoever wrong with that. We have no problem with that. In fact, the Holy Quran puts forth challenges. The Holy Quran put forth challenges in that to the atheists and disbelievers, as it states to us in the Quran. And it tells us clearly, أَمْ يَقُولُونَ تَقَوَّلَ بَلْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ فَلْيَأْتُوا بِجَدِيدٍ بِحَدِيثٍ مِثْلِهِ إِنْ كَانُوا صَادِقِينَ. Said, for you, are you going to talk about this deen, al-Islam, as it says here, or do they say he, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has forged this Quran or bring this Quran into existence? No. Rather, they believe not. They have no iman in them. They have no belief whatsoever about this book called Quran. Don't just say that this is a forged book. Your belief is not in this, so you will make any type of what? Claim. And this is what the Quran is saying. So let them produce a ayat, a verse like it, if they are truthful. And this is the challenge of the Quran. The Quran is not saying, well, to be quiet. Don't let them say anything. Stop them from saying anything. No, the Quran is saying, bring evidential proof to prove that the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not true. The message that he is carrying, which is the Quran, prove it wrong. Don't challenge that which you have no knowledge about in respect of that particular instant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making also the counter challenge. You do something different to this. Prove something to the Quran that you can do. And that challenge has been there since when? The time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he received revelation. And that challenge remains a challenge till today. So no amount of atheists, no agnostic, no one who preaches something and tells us something against Islam, that Islam is preventing us from giving out the challenge. In fact, we have many scholars in the world today who are so versed in Christianity, Hinduism and Islam, and they are all willing to accept the challenge of anyone who can do something like this. But there's none that can bring forth such a challenge. And throughout the life history of Islam, there have always been people who can produce such a challenge. Why is this important for us to note? Because the target is our youths. Because they lack that level of understanding and understanding why they should not be fearful of what the Quran is saying. That that people are saying that we are afraid to speak or to allow people to speak about Islam. In fact, that is not the case. Further to this, the Quran mentions to us again, and if you are in doubt regarding this, then produce a surah or a verse similar to that. And that is the evidence that the Quran is telling us. If you are in doubt of what we are saying, bring something forth that will prove that the Quran is wrong. And that has not been done. Further to this again, it is said to us that the Quran mentions, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ, if you are in doubt, مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَى عَبْدِنَا, as what was sent to our beloved Prophet and our messenger, our servant, فَأْتُ بِسُورَةٍ مِثْلِهِ, then bring forth a surah like it. وَدَعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. He says, and bring everybody you want together if you are truthful. So the Quran is not just saying just produce one. It is saying now bring everybody in the world. If you want to bring the whole world together to do something against the Quran, go right ahead and try. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is stating clearly in the Quran that the challenge here is not just about telling us that we will be quiet in the sense that we want people not to talk or criticize Islam. No. Islam, if you want, go right ahead and try. Islam is not preventing you from doing this. However, it must make sense. In other words, you can't tell people, well, they are like that, they are militant and they're going to destroy you. If you talk anything about Islam, the Muslims are ready for you. What is your proof that is the nature of Muslims? No. That is an image that you are trying to what? Portray. And that is not what Islam is about. And it has never been that way. In fact, when Islam came to the forefront, the real idolaters, the mushrikas, those who ascribe partners with Allah from amongst the peoples of Makkah, and the people who had no belief in any type of a God, the only place that the Muslims had sought refuge would have been amongst the Christians. And they were the closest in understanding Islam, as Islam was as close to Christianity as Christianity is. Why? Because this is amongst those monotheistic religions that actually teaches and propagate the oneness of the Creator and the Lord of the world. So there is, for the challenge of anyone who denies a God, that then they have to actually challenge Christianity, Judaism, Islam, amongst those religions that says that there is only one God. Whatever little differences there are between us, that is not what these atheists are trying to prove before us. And why are they becoming such a challenge for the world and the youth at large? Is because what is their concept? What is it that they are purporting and sending forward? It is that we should note that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this creation, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, let them bring their supporters to prove these things, we should know that the jinns, one part of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are supernatural creatures. They cannot be seen. They existed on the earth before us. Creatures who are taught to have greater power and knowledge, therefore. Allah Almighty put both human and jinns combined to challenge and ask them to produce something combined with their collective intellect. Allah says that even if they both supported each other, they could not produce something like the Quran. Even if all of this creation come together, they could not produce something like the Quran, which proves the fact that it is neither the word of a man nor a jinn. Rather, it is the word of Allah, who is all-wise, of the greatest intellect, and it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is this important to come to understand? Why? Because in the world today, there is a different phase. What is the phase? The phase is that the human beings are scientifically, intellectually sound. That we know ourselves better than anything else. We, as human beings, we construct our understanding, our ability that we can do anything. We know ourselves so good, we could fix any of our problems within our body. And this is what science is teaching the world, that there is no God, but there is a human being who has the knowledge and capacity of everything. And that is the sickness of the society and the world today. So it leaves off morality, but brings into to the forefront knowledge. And this is what our youths are being bombarded with. So the key point is that for those people of that nature, thus far, is that far more the voice of criticism of Islam is part of a general critique of religion. It has been repeatedly made clear that one of those thinkers thinks that Islam is uniquely threatening. This is their thought, that it's a threatening force. While the other major world religions have been fertile source of intolerance, it is clear that the doctrine of Islam poses unique problems for the emergence of the globalization of civilization. You understand what they are coming with? That the world cannot come together and live harmoniously because Islam is causing its prevention. That globalization cannot take place. And this is totally far from what the truth is. The fact is that the Muslims actually brought the world together that we have today, what you call the modern world. This was actually developed and formed by the Muslims in the very first fact that we ruled the world for so many 100 years and did what to the world? Brought technology to the world, brought education to develop the first university in the world, established the largest of the libraries in the world, made so much significance inroad into construction and the development of the world at large. This was the effort and the input of Muslims in the world. So why would you think that they will not be of a benefit for the improvement of civilization? Why would you think that they will be somewhat different and not wanting to enhance it? In fact, that they may be the only ones, the human beings, amongst the human beings, who would prefer to have true and sincere interaction with each and every human being, in terms of trust in trade and business, in terms of dealing with one another, proper relationship with human beings in their everyday life, Islam has a better and a more approachable solution to all of the challenges that we face in the world today. So to say that Islam is a source of problem for the emergence of globalization, it cannot be from the fact that they are human beings who are just like everyone else, who lives and grows and develop an economy and a society at large. So for anyone to be presenting such a message to our children that Islam only prevents the world from going forward is actually preventing or presenting to our children a message or a band or a broad misconception of what Islam is all about. He has, and those people of that nature, has insisted that there is a unique dangers from Muslims possessing nuclear weapon, as opposed to nice Western Christian, the only ones to ever use them. In other words, of those kinds was the Jews at that particular time. The only time that a weapon that was used out of nuclear thing was against what? Hiroshima. Who used it? Right? When did a Muslim fire a missile actually of that nature that to destroy the world in any way? And the fear that is being built is against who? The Muslims will use it. But the first person and the first set of people to use it is not from amongst the Muslims. So it is not about debating who is right or wrong, but it's to see from history what is being told and what is being purported and being brought forth as to create what is the fear. So the understanding here is not about debating or trying to figure out who is right from wrong, but there's some history for us to know the facts that it was not the Muslims who fired a bomb on Hiroshima that killed so many people. Until today, there are people who are sick out of this particular bomb. And that nature of news today has settled itself that it is comfortable to live knowing that that has happened among world history. In fact, that should have been something that we announce every year to acknowledge the danger of such harmful weapons in the world. And yet, after that has happened, more and more of such types of dangerous bombs have continued to what? Exist in the world and grow in the world, and more people are selling and more people are building these things. Why? You know, this is some of the fear that we should say that no one from history will be able to prove that this is not right. That this is not right. That what you are saying is not the truth. The truth of the matter is that the most irresponsible people to use it was not Muslims. They were not Muslims. And from history it is proven like that. And you can go further to other aspects of situations that happened that, you know, people were making different types of claims that people had weapons of mass destruction and so on. And when they went into these places after killing thousands and thousands of people, they found out that there was no weapons of what? Mass destruction, but it was actually a mass destruction of people that actually took place. Nothing more than that. So it is not for us to say weigh on which is right or wrong, but what is to understand is what has taken place in history. And history has the records that proves of who has caused more killings and more destruction to the world, were it the Muslims or were it those who are today like the atheists who are purporting and putting to our young children that Islam is that religion that they should fear, that would use weapons to kill everybody in the world. So that in itself tells us that, you know, don't buy into that level of propaganda. Let our children not become fearful of their Islam. That yes, there are people who would use them, take them to countries and out of the country to commit murder against their own Muslims. And that is totally what? Wrong, because Islam doesn't actually preach such a concept. And it's not part of our deen that people will encourage others to fight and destroy one another. No, it is not part of our Islam. So we must make clear to our children that these things that we are seeing before our eyes, our knowledge of our history and what is being brought forth by the atheists in their propaganda against the Muslims should not be tolerated, but actually being dispelled by proper information. It should be of particular concern to us that the belief of devout Muslims pose a special problem for nuclear deterrence. The atheist tactic is by one, as we know, Islamophobia. And they use this point of irrational and disproportionate and unjustified focus on Muslims. This is one of the things that they use as their tactics against Muslims. We had to recognize, out of all of that, that as Muslims, that what they try to do against our youths and ourselves is just to belittle and to distort the truth from what actually takes place. So Muslims can reasonably be said to exist as a group in the terms, and this is what they actually come to understand, that Muslims can reasonably be said to exist as a group in terms of their adherence to the doctrine of Islam. And there is no race for Muslims. Muslims don't see race. We don't look at each other differently. They are not united by any physical traits or a diaspora. We don't look at ourselves rich or poor. We don't look at ourselves in any form as separation and group or particular clique or particular color or particular race. Islam does not see any of these things. So what it is that can be used against the Muslims? If the Muslims are what? One group. The fact is that we are told by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran also tells us that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad Rasulullah walladhina ma'ahu ashidda al kufara, that they know that the Muslims, that they are united and they are one brotherhood, that they're together and they are strong against any type of ills that comes forth in society, that we unite together as a united force against what is that. Even the Quran tells us that we are the best of ummat, the best of people. Kuntum khayru ummatin ukhrijat. You are the best of people. Come forward for the best of the nation and the people all together. We are the best. What is the key element here that is used to destroy the ummah today? What is our weakness? If we ask ourselves and analyze, is it just from the atheist standpoint, what do they see as the weakness of the Muslims? What do you think they pounce on and attack? It is nothing to do with what? With the ummah itself in terms of knowing that they are together. In other words, you can't attack them by saying, well, Trinity Muslims in Trinidad, they're not the correct kind of Muslims. You shouldn't have no Muslims in that part of the world because we don't belong to that. You can't born a Muslim in Trinidad. We don't have that kind of concept in Islam. So you cannot even use that because that is not part of it. What we are trying to say that the knowledge here today and the understanding is that the only thing that defines the class of all Muslims and the only thing that could make this group the possible target of anyone's irrational fear and disproportionate focus or unjustified criticism is their adherence to the set of beliefs and the behavior that these beliefs inspire. What does that say? It tells us in simple terms that the weakness of this ummah lies in our ability to hold together in that unification format that we are together by the Quran. If every Muslim in the world adhere to the Quran as the Quran ought to be adhered to and live according to the Quran as the Quran ought to be followed, and there is no deviation in us living and practicing Islam in that accordance, what do you think the Ummah would be like? It will be like just like the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam time, that there will be no deviation. When we see in the Ummah today that there are people who would follow the same Quran and encourage other people to go and take the lives of other Muslims because of their interpretation of the Quran, that tells us that something is wrong with the minds of such people who would use this belief, and that is what they will use to attack the Muslims. When we deviate from the correct interpretation of the Quran and will want to use the Quran and lie against the Quran to create such what? Separation, then they will use that as a means of showing that the whole world is bad. Is that the correct interpretation by every Muslim in the world? No, it is not. So if few people interpret the Quran to be, or a verse to be like this, and they go right ahead and do something wrong that is not acceptable by the rest of the ummah, what would we do? Should the whole world of Muslims now be bombarded and branded the same way? But this is our weakness. This is the weakness of the ummah today, is that many interpretations of the Quran has led people in different directions because they feel that they are right. No one would ever take the opportunities to show some level of precaution, some level of understanding that whether what I am doing is the right thing that the Quran is telling us. So Quran, along with the Sunnah today, many people have different types of interpretation of the same verse, same hadith. Why? Yes, Islam allows for different interpretations, but it does not allow for those type of things based on what has happened in the time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What he did, if those things are in line with Quran, then we should ask ourselves, what we are doing today, is it the right thing? So there is a level of deviation that is used, and it is as a source of what the atheists and other people would use against Islam. They say, all right, they do this, all of them like that. Everyone is like that, and that should never be the case. So the fact of it is that Muslims in general today, the world, amongst the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it is our responsibility. It is our responsibility. And that is one of the fear the Prophet ﷺ had, that knowledge will be taken away from this world. True knowledge will be taken away from this world today. Because many Muslims today, they act and they react without knowledge. They act and react without proper sound knowledge. And they refuse to accept the knowledge that is of most essential to them in the way that they behave. And that has led to more and more destruction within the ummah. It has led the ummah into falling into that state of corruption and the state of destruction because we lack knowledge. And that becomes the weapon of the unbelievers. It becomes the weapon of the non-Muslims and the atheists, that they see that the Muslims, they can't defend themselves. They can't even agree on what the Quran says. They cannot even follow the Quran directly. And this is the challenge that we have. So when our youngsters look at us and what the atheist is saying, well, look at them. Them came argue on one thing. Like many instances when Ramadan will come, we have one long set of problems with that. When it comes to other aspects of the deen, and it's just ritual problems we're having. Not even problems with the other major problems that we face in the world today from the Islamic perspective. And we go on and on battling amongst ourselves, not even understanding how we should unify our knowledge and how we should put forth to the world the correct and the most asah and most right position of Islam. Is that possible? Today, the ummah is weak in knowledge. And those who even have knowledge, they're sometimes being used as pawns for people's pockets. And they carry about their own whims and fancies and the decisions of those people, not the Islam. And that is the danger that we face in society today. And even the society that they lead lack the level of knowledge. I'm not saying that we are totally ignorant. What I'm saying is that we do not have that cohesiveness, that collective understanding that this deen has a particular direction for this ummah to follow. And if our youths cannot see that, what do you expect them to follow? And that is the debate that they are using. That is the debate that the atheists and the agnostic are using against our educated students, boys and girls who become major people in the world today in terms of big degrees, and then they go out into these societies and say, look at all the Muslim people. Look how they behave. Because now these same young men and women, they don't have the knowledge. They don't understand what to think about Islam. So what they will be left to defend? They cannot even defend anything because what they see is evident of Muslims who cannot agree and fight amongst themselves, and they will only argue amongst themselves. Why? Because that is the easiest of the targets that anyone can use. In other words, if someone knows your weakness, that is the first point of your defeat and your attack. And the first point of our weakness lies in our inability to put together our knowledge in a collective way that we are all agreeing that this is it. So many people follow Quran. Many people say that Quran. And we all follow the same sunnah, the same prophet. But lo and behold, we operate like a different kind of people altogether. This group and that group and that group and that group, and let our children choose. And with limited knowledge that you give them, you are just giving them enough room so that the atheists can have a level of leverage over them. And that is an offer for losing our children in our society today. So the fact is that we have reached this far. We have reached this far in society. We have grown as Muslim in a society, and we're doing so much things. But one of the things that we have to get back in order is to get back our children educated on Islam, to get them to understand that the differences in the world among the knowledge, some of it is accepted, some of it is really out and way away from what Islam is all about. And we must be able to highlight these things. If we don't highlight these things, then what are we doing as Muslims? Are we just allowing people to tell us what is wrong? No, we who are in Islam must be able to distinguish and let the world know what Islam really stands for. That will be the majority view of the Muslim world. We have to share that knowledge to the world. We have to let the Muslim world know that we are aware of these are the people practices we're seeing here, this is wrong. And we must blatantly come outright and let the world know this. And that is something that we are not doing collectively. One group will do it from amongst us, and then the rest of Muslims will criticize them for doing it. And then they will make that particular group that makes that announcement or pronouncement as though them is a bad group. So that is the nature of how we fight each other on today. So one group said, better we stay quiet. And one group said, no, we have to say something. And the next group will say, well, it doesn't really matter. And that's how we're surviving. But that's not how we should survive. Knowing the dangers that are before us, we have a right to think how to save our children from what the challenges are before them. In this reference as well, the Quran has mentioned, as it says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر. If we are the best thing that Allah has made for the propagation and the guidance of mankind, and we are in this condition, and we are the best, what is it really? How you could be best and you're not really there. You're not really there. You're not really there physically as a human being. You're not really there physically and mentally sound as a Muslim. You're not there spiritually bright and glowing with light and guidance that you're willing to share to the community and to the world. Then how can you be the best? And Allah is saying that you are the best. No one is saying it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that you are the best. It is not by anyone else but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are the best of people. In other words, the Muslims cannot just sit down and wait there. We no longer can sit down and say, well, what are we going to do? But Allah is saying, you are the best. You have the knowledge. You have the Quran. You have the Sunnah. You have the things that will make the human beings in our whole society transform. But you are not doing anything with it. You're not making an effort to become what you are supposed to be. In other words, it's just like your children. They give you excuses for everything. Every time you tell them to do something, they have an excuse, but this or but that, and they go in with an excuse. And I say, but no, I've given you everything the best, and I know that you will make it, and all you can only give me is excuse. This is what this ummah is doing today before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excuses after excuses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability. Allah has made us the best. Allah has given us guidance. Allah has given us the knowledge, the ability, the wherewithal. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you are the best? We have something that is really beneficial to us, and that is the help of Allah. We have the help of Allah in everything that we do as long as we make effort to do that which Allah wants us to do. And if we do that, then we become the best, because the best is that nothing will be able to come in the way of the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah just wants to use us in terms of creating the goodness in our community. He says, for what purpose? تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ الْمُنكَرِ. You are the ones to encourage goodness in society. Your job is to encourage kindness. Your job is to see that people live good. Your job is to see that there is no level of crime, hate, that there is no level of, that where we see people would want to discriminate against a religion or a race of people. Islam is there to go against all of these things. In fact, is that in the Islamic world, we can prove that for thousands of years that Islam was there, that what happened? Christians lived there, non-Muslims lived there. Were there any fights? No. Why? Because Islam maintained the peace amongst these religions. They were allowed to practice their religion. They had their churches in these places. Islam never prevented them from it. Islam never attacked their homes, their families, nor their children. But today it somehow has changed from something else to something totally different. So Allah says, "Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf." You are encouraged to do good and encourage people in doing goodness and to prevent wrong and harm from taking place in our society. Whose responsibility it is? It is the Muslims' responsibility. It is our responsibility to teach them. So when the atheists would come with these types of rhetoric and these types of things against our children, we must know that there is no foundation for it in Islam. There is no foundation for it in Islam. But if we cannot prove it, in other words, we don't have the ability or the knowledge to do it, and we don't propagate this knowledge outside, we don't share this via media, we don't share this via our efforts in our communities, then what is going to happen? It will never reach anywhere. It will never reach anywhere. People will not know that this is what Islam is about. And therefore the effort here against the agnostic and the atheist is that we have to get out of the situation and the sickness that we have and move forward and changing that. In the conclusion of this, that we must know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, that whatever of those irrational thoughts that are put forward by the atheist and the agnostic, that we as Muslims, we should not be thinking of what they profile us with. That is what the world is profiling us with today. We should move away from that. And anyone who looks like that Muslim, whether it's a he or she, could conceivably be them. In other words, they are thinking of looking at every one of us like that today. That is how far they have reached in these type of concepts. We have to move away and change the concept and the mindset that is being brought forward. We are the ones to change it. So therefore, this is what the atheists drive against Muslims. All Muslims must pray for patience and the guidance of these people to the path of the truth. If these people come onto the path of Islam, they will be of a benefit to us. Otherwise, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from their hatred, from their rhetorics and their way of trying to destroy Islam and to destroy Muslims and to portray that level of profiling against the Muslims. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from those things. And more so, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children from such disaster that may take place out of such actions that are not truth to this deen of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this effort, inshallah. Let us all make dua, inshallah. Allahumma ameen. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار سمعنا وطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير فسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
إني ألقى الإناس في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع الطاعات في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع الطاعات